everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, this week we are going to take a very brief break out of our Women's History Month celebrations, and instead we are going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with a handful of really interesting films, all centering around Ireland in some way, shape, or form. Some of them feature really gorgeous settings. A few have phenomenal Irish actors, Irish filmmakers. These are films I think that people should definitely check out. And I've tried to pick from different genres so that whether you're a rom-com fan, whether you're a history buff, you might find something really interesting. As always, these films are all available entirely for free with the use of your Milan Berlin library card. We have 3 video services: CleveNet's Overdrive, Hoopla Digital, and Canopy, and all of the recommendations today come from either Hoopla Digital or Canopy. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to the recs. Okay, kicking things off with a recommendation on Hoopla Digital, and that is 2020's Wild Mountain Thyme. Now, this is a John Patrick Shanley romantic comedy. Shanley did Moonstruck back in the 80s, and he's done tons and tons of incredible plays over the years. I really do love his work. But when Wild Mountain Thyme came out, it was critically panned. And I mean panned. It has something horrific like a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, this was a movie that people vilified, and I never could understand it. The cast is really solid. You've got Emily Blunt playing your lead character. Emily is always amazing. I've never seen her in anything that I've hated or even really disliked. You've got Jamie Dornan, who is a perfectly serviceable actor. You've got like Christopher Walken, John Hamm. I mean, it's a solid cast. So what went wrong? Well, for me, in all honesty, at the end of the day, it's an enjoyable film. I was looking for a romance, and that's what I got. I think most people's issue is probably going to be with the accents. Because I will say, Christopher Walken doing an Irish accent is laughably bad. Like, laughably. There were definitely moments when I giggled a little bit just because Christopher Walken's natural speech pattern is already a bit of its own accent. So to throw a little sprinkle of Irish onto it, it's pretty ridiculous, but he's still delightful. I mean, it's Christopher Walken. Anytime I see him in a thing, whether it's like a commercial or a film or a TV show, it's still going to be Christopher Walken. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it was still enjoyable. That's the thing. And probably my terrible American ears didn't get all of the nuance from some of the complaints about other people's accents, but I still enjoyed the storyline. It is very much like full of charm. I did see that argued as being a negative too. It was trying too hard to be charming, but I found it, in a lot of places really delightful. And I think that's also partly like Shanley's writing is very quirky in a lot of ways. I mean, it definitely feels like a play rather than a film, I would say, in a lot of flow ways. But the most important thing for me in a romantic comedy is the chemistry between the leads. And for me, Emily Blunt and Jamie Dornan had excellent chemistry. I wanted them together. That's kind of the purpose of a romantic comedy. You want your leads to get together. And I can't say that I felt that way for every single romantic comedy I've ever watched. There are definitely times that I'm like, I don't like these characters. I don't want them to be together. That is not what happens in Wild Mountain Thyme. You love these two. They're odd and unusual and very quirky. Like, I don't even know a better word than quirky. Weird is maybe a little too far, but they're also weird at the same time. But yeah, they're kind of perfect together though. Like their odd natures and quirks make them really fit as a duo, and I just really liked it. So yeah, if you're looking for something that's sweet and charming and has a gorgeous setting, it was filmed on location, and there are moments when the camera just does this pan across the landscape, and it's like, it kind of makes you sigh. And I don't know if that's just me because I love that visual aspect of filmmaking, but it really does transport you into that sort of idealized Irish landscape. And it's so pretty. This film is so pretty. Like the lighting, the costuming, the sets. It's if you love that aspect, the production aspect of films, this one is an absolute must watch. Um, but yeah, I would strongly recommend this if you enjoy charming, quirky, twee kinds of romantic comedies. This one definitely has all of that in spades. So again, ignore whatever critics generally are saying and just check out Wild Mountain Thyme. I think you'll like it, and I had a good time while I watched it, and I think you might too. All right, moving right along to our next recommendation, which is also available on Hoopla Digital. This one is a much more serious film than my last recommendation, and it's 1997's Michael Collins. Now, Michael Collins is a biopic sort of chronicling a large part of the life of Michael Collins, who was, for those who don't know, a really massive figure in the Irish independence movement in the early 20th century. He's fairly controversial in different circles. And this film is one of those movies that really grabs you from the very first scenes. It stars a fantastic cast. Liam Neeson plays the titular character. You've also got Aidan Quinn. Alan Rickman is in there. Stephen Rea, who is amazing. You've also got the questionable casting of Julia Roberts. I've always thought that was weird. But for the most part, I think this film is super effective. It is one of those movies that absolutely will evoke an emotional response, and it sticks with you, the storyline. Now, I will say that this film did get quite a lot of flack for playing a bit fast and loose with certain parts of Irish history. Certain things happen in the film in a way that's very different from real life, or certain things happen in the film that don't happen at all in real life. But the grit and the drama and the overall tension and feel, I think, really help imbue the situation with all of the emotion and all of the pain and the struggle that the Irish independence movement had with it at the time period, especially. It's so brilliantly acted. Like, Liam Neeson is just incredible in this movie, like absolutely incredible. But I can't say enough about all of the surrounding cast, again, with the exception of Julia Roberts, who is, I mean, like she plays the love interest, obviously, and I would imagine because of the time when this came out in that like mid to late 90s, I mean, she was the golden girl at the box office, so she would definitely be a draw. But the actual storyline really does center around Collins and the men who were always with him. And it's a story about, camaraderie, about challenge, about betrayal. And it's just so intense, like really intense and impactful. I do think it does an excellent job of getting across that feeling, the struggle, the all of the challenges, all of the emotion that was tied up in this desire for independence. The parts that do play fast and loose, I can't talk about too much because they are quite pivotal moments in the movie. And so from a historical standpoint, I get why people were unhappy about that. But Neil Jordan, who directed and worked on this film, explained his reasoning as trying to create a more emotional, evoke a more emotional response for people who were not familiar with, say, the minutiae of Irish history. So he tried to combine people's storylines. He tried to combine events so that he could fit all of this emotion packed minutia into a 2-hour film. Filmmaking standpoint, I 100% get it, absolutely back it. Under like that's what you have to do. From again a historical standpoint, I also understand that's very, very frustrating because it does sort of trivialize certain things. But at the end of the day, I think Michael Collins is an excellent, excellent film about the Irish independence movement. I think it does its job in uh, evoking a real emotional response, about getting you tied to these people, about making you more curious, hopefully, about what happened. So you go and look up what's fact and what was altered, and the details of certain situations, of certain battles, and the results, and I think that it's very effective in that regard. If you are looking for something that is brilliantly acted, that evokes huge emotional response, because again, you get so wrapped up in the story of these people. You are looking for something that does an excellent job of detailing history to an extent. I think this is a phenomenal film, and I highly recommend it. Again, available on Hoopla Digital. Michael Collins. Please check it out. Okay, moving along and back to another more lighthearted story is my next Hoopla recommendation, and that's 1995's Secret of Roan, Inish. I adore this film. I watched it way back in the day when I was a kid, and I've watched it once every handful of years ever since, and I love it just as much with each successive watching. Now, in Secret of Roan Inish, we really dive into some Celtic myths and legends, and I absolutely adore that kind of thing. I've always found myths and legends fascinating, and it doesn't matter what region they come from, I'm automatically grabbed by those stories. And Secret of Roan Inish does such a good job of layering that mythology with the time that the film takes place. So in this particular movie, we follow this young Irish girl named Fiona. She is sent to live with her grandparents, away from her father, who is ill, and her mother, who has just recently passed away. And once she goes to live with her grandparents, she starts getting inundated with these extraordinary tales of legend and myth. Um, they tell her stories about the Selkies and how she's connected to Selkies within her own family history. And she just gets more and more steeped in these legends and these tales. And it's such a romantic thing. I love the relationship between her and her grandparents, and then as well with her cousin who she meets when she moves here. And there's also this storyline about a long missing baby brother that gets woven into everything. And there's just something so beautiful about the way this sort of mystical tale all comes together. You have a strong thread of realism as well, but that sort of charm of the otherworldly never disappears. I think that's definitely part of what I love about some of these styled Irish tales, that combination of the two sort of themes, the realism with the mystical. This one has excellent, excellent acting done by the child cast. I'm usually not one for kid actors. I definitely, when something features a child, I'm definitely like side eyeing it. But these kids are amazing. They're really, really solid actors. No side eye for me on these ones. Your older cast is, of course, exceptionally solid. And then just the way the film is made, it's beautiful. It's got incredible shots of setting, but it also, everything fits together to give it that sort of lifted feel, that sort of not quite real ambiance, and I really, really, really love it. If you are looking for something charming, something about relationships between the generations, something about storytelling and myths and legends. You absolutely need to check out Secret of Roan Inish. It's such a fantastic film. It is, in fact, my pick of the week. Please, please, please check it out. It's available on Hoopla Digital. Okay, last recommendation for this week, and this one is available on Canopy, and that is 2017's short, The Silent Child. This is an incredible, incredible short that I think everybody should watch. It is emotional, it is draining, it is challenging, it is a hard watch, but it is phenomenal. It won the Academy Award for its year. And because it's so short, it's a very fast watch. But man, do you feel drained by the end of it. So, Silent Child is based on real life events. It tells the story of a young girl named Libby and her struggles with her family. Libby, at 3 years old, is discovered to be deaf. Her family had no idea. So, prior to that, they had always found her just to be difficult or challenging. And the relationship is strained from the very first scenes of this movie. And it really is about a lack of communication and connection and how to bring those things to this young girl who lived in this isolating, silent world with parents who, for lack of a better way to put it, don't really like her, and how incredibly alone this child is. We very quickly see a young social worker who is inspired, who is dedicated, who sees this isolation in this little girl and is trying to bring things like warmth and connection and love and affection to her. We see the relationship between those two grow, and we also see how that's juxtaposed against her biological family. As this short unfolds, we find there's a lot more going on in Libby's life than what we initially see and are initially led to believe, and all of those complications lead to an even more isolated child. You know, like I said, this one's a hard watch, but so worth it. It really is all about how unbelievably important connection is to a child, how connection to the world, to people who love her, to people who care about her future, and how all of those things will unfold. I mean, how the lack of those can completely, completely devastate someone. This is so beautifully acted. I mean, the little girl who plays Libby is incredible. I mean, she's so young, and to be able to pull those emotions to the forefront to display is ridiculous. And then the young woman who plays her social worker, I'm every time she hurts for Libby, you hurt as well. Like, the emotion is a palpable thing. Um, you hate the people you're supposed to hate. And again, this is a short. It's like 20 minutes long, and you go through this riot of emotions while you're watching, and it's crazy. The way you're so easily sucked in. I can absolutely see why this won the Oscar. Again, stories about the importance of connection, communication are just something special, I think. And this one just adds layer upon layer to that. If you are interested in films that really explore the importance of relationships between characters, this is absolutely a film that you need to check out. It tells an incredible story. It is a hard watch. It's emotionally devastating in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. So there'll be like trigger warnings all over the place, I would imagine. But it is absolutely worth a watch. I strongly, strongly recommend it. So please, please check out The Silent Child, available on Canopy. You won't regret it. Okay, so those were my picks for this week. If you have any recommendations for films featuring Irish actors, Irish filmmakers, Irish storylines and settings, please, 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 as always, recommend those down below in the comments. I'd love to watch more. If you have any recommendations for future themes that you'd like to see us talk about over here, please comment with those as well. I'm definitely always looking for those. As always, thank you so, so much for joining me this week. I love putting these lists together, and it's just such a joy to sort of get to search through our catalog and find films that I think people will like and want to watch more of. As I've said many, many times, if one of these films doesn't work for you, please, please, please check out our streaming services. You will 100% find something on there. There are thousands upon thousands of films available. So with that, I'm going to close out this episode. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.